Hi everyone! In this week's episode, you will see all the launches occurring around the world from Friday the 8th of September 2023 onward. I will mention Axiom latest announcements. We will check up on Starbase. I will update you on the flight readiness of Booster 9 and Ship 25. NASA has also completed an experiment on Mars to produce oxygen. Orbex is stepping up his operations in Scotland. James Webb Space Telescope is showing off his supernova, and Bangor University is edging closer to self-sufficiency of Moon or Mars-based infrastructure. On the 9th of September, SpaceX launched 21 Starlink V2 mini satellites, Group 614, to low Earth orbit at 530 km high, from the Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Now, the booster has landed on a drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas, for its 7th time. And you may know that SpaceX recouped also the fairing halves, and these ones were recouped from the Atlantic Sea, from the vessel Dog. Now, this was SpaceX's 64th Falcon 9 launch of the year, and for information, this was the 103rd Starlink launch, bringing the total Starlink satellite launch so far to 5,070, and 4,726 of those are still in orbit around the Earth. On the 10th of September, China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation launched a Long March 6A with its remote sensing satellite Yongang 40 on board from its Taiwan Satellite Launch Center in China. We do not know much more than that, I'm afraid. On the 10th of September, ULA launched an Atlas V 551 for the National Reconnaissance Office and the United States Space Force, with the satellite NRO 107 on board from the Space Launch Complex 41 at Cape Canaveral in Florida. That is the second ULA mission this year and the 157th Atlas V launch in total. This flight actually was originally planned on the 29th of August, but it was delayed due to tropical storm Idai. On the 12th of September UTC, SpaceX launches 21 Starlink V2 mini satellites on board of its Falcon 9 Block 5, called here Group 72, out of the Space Launch Complex 4 East from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. Now, these satellites were en route to a low Earth orbit at 525 km altitude. The first stage has landed for its 11th time on the drone ship Of Course I Still Love You, which was 643 km downrange in the Pacific Ocean. Now, on the 15th of September, Firefly Aerospace sent the Victus Nox spacecraft for the United States Space Force Space Systems Command, that's a bit of a mouthful, with an Alpha rocket out of its Space Launch Complex number 2 out of Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. Now, this was a successful launch not just for the fact that the classified payload reached its low Earth orbit, but also it helped validate the rapid response launch within 24 hours between receiving an urgent payload to launch. Now, factually, they've managed to do the launch within 27 hours, unlike the contract, but that was mainly to do with the launch window availability for this particular mission. So nevertheless, it is an amazing achievement by Firefly, so well done, Firefly. On the 15th of September, Roscosmos sent a Soyuz 2.1A with his Soyuz MS-24 capsule to the ISS, which is 400 kilometers high, from his launch complex 31-6 at Baikonur Cosmodromes in Kazakhstan. Now, the 3 people crew on board are the commander Oleg Kononenko from Roscosmos, the flight engineer Chub Nikolai from Roscosmos, and the astronaut Laurel Uhara, flight engineer from NASA. Axiom announces his Axiom Mission 3 crew this week. Mission specialist Marcus Wandt, ESA astronaut from Sweden on the left-hand side of the picture, pilot Walter Valadei from Italian Air Force, Commander Michael Lopez Alegria from US and Spain citizenship, former NASA astronaut and also former Axiom 1 commander, and mission specialist Alper Gezerevsi from Turkey. The 2 mission specialists have actually served in their nation air forces. It is the first time ESA is sending his astronaut via a commercial spaceflight mission. So the crew is destined to the International Space Station, as you would have assumed, after receiving NASA and ISS partner approval for the 4-person multinational team to travel to this orbiting laboratory, but no earlier than January 2024. So once docked, the Axiom 3 astronauts plan to spend up to 14 days on board implementing a full mission comprised of microgravity research, educational outreach, and commercial activities.
At Starbase this week, we saw Ship 22 painted in white. If you remember the previous episodes, I have mentioned that this nose cone was recycled to be an HLS demonstrator, so that's the human landing system, and the white paint is very much in line with it. Now the Booster 9 and Ship 25 atop are ready for launch, that's what you see on the background. Then a manifold, part of the deluge system, was removed to be replaced by a much larger one. Now the new Mega Bay also is progressing, as you can see, and Ship 26 was also transported from the rocket garden to the launch site to be spin primed and static fired, as I expect. This ship has no fins, no tiles or payload door, as you could see, and I believe this is probably destined to be the prototype for orbital refueling, or simply the HLS first draft. So you could see from this area the aerial view and the size of the Starbase factory, taking quite a size of the manufacturing site.
Booster 10 was then placed onto a thrust simulator stand and further transported to the Macy site for future cryogenic tests, where the engine loads is simulated by the particular stand. Now later on the week, the Star Factory continued its expansion, as you could see on the footage from NSF. SpaceX has provided the FAA's mishap report on the 21st of August regarding the failed attempt to launch Booster 4 and Ship 20 into orbit back on the 20th of April 2023. On the 7th of September now, the FAA replied to the mishap report and provided 63 items to be resolved following the mishap by SpaceX. The 63 items mentioned here are already dealt with, 57 are already implemented, and 6 are part of a future action to be taken by SpaceX. Now, the point I'm making here is that the FAA has been closely working with SpaceX ever since April, so that SpaceX has had plenty of time to implement the requested items prior to releasing them on the 7th of September. Therefore, it seems that there is no further showstopper to the
to issue the license on the ground of the mishap report. Let us wait and see when this massive rocket will be launched. In Mars, Perseverance has successfully completed a mission to extract oxygen from the atmosphere of the red planet, thanks to an onboard instrument called Moxie, meaning Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment. Now, the carbon dioxide makes about 96% of the Mars atmosphere. NASA has developed the Moxie instrument, which can separate its molecule in 2 oxygen atoms and 1 carbon. The instrument, in fact, separates only one of the oxygen atom and leaves the carbon monoxide as a byproduct released back in the atmosphere. So during the process of separating the oxygen atom, the temperature rises up to 798 Celsius degree, and Moxie therefore has received a gold coating and an aerogel. The presence of heat-resistant material ensures that the heat is retained inside the tool. So the aim of the experiment is to demonstrate the possibility of generating oxygen on the red planet. It will be obviously needed not only for breathing, but also the scientists plan to use the oxygen in rockets that will bring people back home. So the experiment lasted about 2 years. It has been 16 runs, and Moxie was able to produce 122 grams of oxygen with a purity of at least 98%. So 122 grams is really small, very insignificant, but it's a first step. And by the way, the rate was 12 grams of oxygen produced per hour, which is twice as much as NASA's original goal for this instrument. So the next step, according to NASA, would be to building a full-scale system that would include an oxygen generator like Moxie and a way to liquefy and store that oxygen.
Orbex, a UK-based spaceflight company, announced the appointment of Leslie Steele as its new Chief of Sutherland Spaceport Operation. This key appointment comes as Orbex advances its preparation for the UK mainland's inaugural vertical rocket launch. Now, she has 4 decades of aerospace industry experience, starting with British Airways, then Logan Air, Bone Offshore Helicopters, and has held strategic leadership positions throughout her career, specializing in the planning and delivery of effective ground and logistics operations to support commercial aerospace organizations. Now, she will ensure operational readiness for the first launch of Orbex Prime. This includes managing the spaceport license application and interacting with the various stakeholders involved. On the 31st of August, NASA published that image, which reveals a central structure like a keyhole. Now, this center is packed with clumpy gas and dust ejected by the supernova explosion. Now, the dust is so dense that even near-infrared light that James Webb Space Telescope detects couldn't even penetrate. A bright equatorial ring surrounds the inner keyhole, forming a band around the waist that connects 2 faint arms of hourglass-shaped outer rings. This supernova has previously been observed by Hubble or Chandra and even Spitzer, but not with such accuracy. What the scientific community is looking for is evidence of neutron star formation that should have formed after supernova explosion. Bangor University scientists have developed an energy source which could allow astronauts to live on the moon for a long period of time. It consists of nuclear fuel cells the size of poppy seeds to produce the energy needed to sustain life on the moon and beyond. Professor Simon Middlesbrough, on the right, in his laboratory at Bangor University Nuclear Futures Institute, explained this work is conducted in partnership with Rolls-Royce, the UK Space Agency, NASA, and Los Alamos National Laboratory in the US. Now, the researchers have just sent the tiny nuclear fuel cell known as trisofuel to their partners for testing. This trisofuel cell could be used to power a micronuclear generator created by Rolls-Royce. Now, this generator is a portable device, let's say the size of a small car, and something you can stick on a rocket, said Professor Middlesbrough. The university hopes the micro generators could also be used here on Earth, such as a disaster zone when electricity has been cut off. The team at Bangor is also working on a nuclear system to power rockets led by Dr. Phyllis Makujunje. She said, "It's very powerful, it gives very high thrust, the push it gives to the rocket." Before we go, I would like to leave you with a picture of the week. It comes from the Hubble Space Telescope, where the Hubble dispelling dust to see a glittering globular cluster called Tarzan 12, located towards the center of our galaxy, which is about 15,000 light years away from Earth. Thank you very much for watching the video, and I hope you've learned something new today. I look forward to seeing you again next week. I'm Christophe Paget. Thank you very much and goodbye.